There we are. We are good to go. Good evening, friends and family, ladies and gentlemen. It's that time again, episode 3, guys, of Trademark Your Mental Wealth. Man, I am so excited about tonight's call, guys. As a way of reference, guys, my name is Ken Lawrence, and I'm joined tonight by my co-host and my good buddy, Mr. Henry Reed. How's it going, guys?
I'm good, brother. How you doing?
Doing great, man. So, guys, tonight's conversation is going to be eye-opening. It's going to be very perspective. So, if you are interested, go ahead right now. Drop your city, drop your state in the comment section so we can see how far I reach this tonight. Also, you may want to share this to your Facebook pages. So, go ahead and get those watch parties started. Get those sharing to your home pages and things because, like I said, guys, tonight is going to be a conversation that you absolutely do not want to miss. We have an electric guest that's going to help educate us when it comes to what the Bible actually says about wealth and money. It's a conversation that a lot of people are actually hesitant to have because there's so many myths about what people actually believe about where money and wealth actually sits in the Bible. So tonight I have a guest that's actually going to clear some things up. And with the Bible, a lot of things I think are subjective. So even with his expertise, some people will probably still be on the fence about this topic. But hopefully we can get the conversation going to where at least dialogue is happening. So without further ado, guys, we're going to go ahead and introduce my guest for tonight. This gentleman is an electric speaker. He's now the pastor of Mount Pleasant Missionary Baptist Church in Centerville, Mississippi. A good friend of mine, one of my hometown guys. So let me go ahead and bring to the call tonight, guys, Miss Pastor LeReginald Jones. Mr. Jones, are you there?
Good evening. I'm here.
How are you, sir?
I'm very well. How are you?
Man, if I was doing any better, I would think they could set me up. So first of all, I want to thank you for taking some time and coming and having this conversation with us. Because like I say, I really, really admire what you do in the pulpit, man, what you do in the community, neighborhood that I'm from. So I understand the demographics there. So everything that you do in the community, man, my community, I want to first of all, thank you for being the man that you are and doing the things that you do in the community.
It's a blessing. It's an honor.
So, man, we're going to go ahead and jump right into this thing, man. First and foremost, go ahead and let everybody know who you are. How long you've been pastoring and what actually brought you to the ministry?
Well, I am Pastor LeReginald Jones. I am 32 years old. I'll be making 33 in just a few months. I pastor 3 churches in our community, Mount Pleasant, Oak Hill First Zion, and St. Matthew Baptist Church number 2. I have been pastoring. This year will be my 9th year of pastoring. I've been preaching for 7. I accepted the call at 24, pastored my first church at 26, and now I am pastoring my home church, succeeding my grandfather, who is no longer with us after he pastored this church, my home church, for 30 years. And so I accepted the call. It was because of the influence of my great-grandfather who really raised me. That really led me into ministry and have a personal relationship with the Lord. And thank God that he has allowed me, has graced me to be able to share my convictions Sunday in and Sunday out from week to week. And so that's what kind of led me in that direction. That's it in a nutshell.
Man, that's awesome because you know, it's amazing sometimes how this thing lays itself out, you know, to say that you were right there at the footsteps of your grandfather and your great-grandfather for all those years, and to see the wisdom that they had and to see the conviction that they had in taking care of their calling, and then for you just to stay there and just be steadfast and just fall right into that position, man. It's just kind of one of those things that just makes you realize that a lot of the things that we stress over, at the end of the day, man, God already got the thing worked out. As long as we just play our cards and just follow the game, we're going to find out right where we end up where we're supposed to be.
Certainly.
So, man, we're going to go ahead and get right into this conversation. Man, I've been waiting for this ever since we talked about it. So the title of this conversation, guys, is
Oh my goodness.
what does the Bible say about generational wealth and money? So before I even get going with my question, I want you to lead us into this conversation, man. Show us where you want us to go with this. What does the Bible say about wealth and money?
Well, I think we have a distorted view of wealth and money, and we look at wealth and money as a sin, which that is not the case. The issue is that we allow money and wealth to open that door to the sin that we know as greed. And that leads people astray, and that leads to other things like arrogance and pride. And we forget what Jesus said in the parable as he was schooling his disciples. When I was hungry, you didn't feed me. When I was naked, you didn't clothe me. When I was thirsty, you didn't give me any water to drink. And the disciples asked him, Master, when have we seen you in these conditions? And he said, whatever you've done to the least of these, you've also done unto me. And so I think that we get a distorted view because we've been taught to pursue education. We've been taught to pursue great jobs and all of these things. But when it comes to money and wealth, as I said, we have a distorted view about that, and I think other things have played into that, as well as what's considered prosperity gospel and all of those other things. But Jesus makes it clear that he has come that we may have life and have it more abundantly. Now, that does not exclusively talk about wealth, but that is a part of it, that we leave an inheritance for those who are left behind. So we just want to, if I could, just want to kind of stay in that groove and look at it from the perspective of stewardship as well, where we can kind of create that generational wealth and have a proper view of what God has blessed us with. If that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And you know, with me being in the financial sector, I've been here now for about 3 years. That's one of the topics that we come across most frequently, because you know, we are, as educators, our teach people how to obtain wealth through means that they already have. So the first thing that we usually find is a lot of people are hesitant to even be wealthy, and I find it quite interesting that people, I think it's actually the opposite of what they really want to do. A lot of people say that they don't want wealth, yet they covet material items. I'm a little bit lost with that, because those material items, you need cash to buy them. And I actually think it works in the inverse order. Yeah, I think it works in the inverse order, because if you want the material things, but you don't want the tool, I think that's kind of what God shies against the most, because now instead of coveting the tool, you covet the material items. And I think that that's where a lot of people kind of get this thing mixed up at.
Yeah, a lot of people want to have all the material possessions, but they don't want to have the tool or the wherewithal to be able to get those possessions as well. More so accumulate wealth than possessions. And I think that we have blurred the lines with wealth and the accumulation of material possessions.
Yeah, we definitely have done that.
Yeah, and television doesn't help. You know, if you turn on the television right now, you know, that's all you see. You know, the Real Housewives of this, you know, balling this, balling that. So a lot of it, I think, has become status symbols of success. And what a lot of people don't realize that, you know, wealth and success, you know, it's two different things, because you find a lot of people that actually have a lot of money that from a mindset perspective are broken. So, you know, I'm not one of those people who believe that money is not a great tool, it's not something good to have, but money alone does not equal success, and it definitely doesn't equal happiness.
Definitely.
So I know when I talk about the subject, man, I usually go to my go-to verses. And Henry know what my go-to verses are. You know, I don't claim to be one of those guys that's a real savant when it comes to the Bible. We went to church, you know, growing up, we went to church, you know, a couple times a month, but I don't claim to be a religious scholar. But there are a few verses that when it comes to money that I usually just go to innately. And we always start with Deuteronomy 8:18. That's my go-to, you know, because it even gives me perspective about what God charges me with. You know, he tells me that he gives me the power to create. Now, just being, you know, perspective about it, the God that I know would never give me the ability to create anything that he didn't want me to have.
Right.
You know, but I look at the wealth more so as a tool. And I also look at it this way too. You know, as I prepare for the call tonight, I thought about that. You know, everything belongs to God. Everything on earth, you know, if we look at it from a material perspective, even the money itself belongs to him. I think more than anything, it's a matter of being disciplined, you know, because if you have a great tool, you know, now your character is going to be coming to question when we see what do you do with this tool. And I definitely look at money as a tool. So if you have a person that has an abundance of money, you know, what do you do with that money now that you have it? Do you use it to help people, as you talked about earlier? Do you use it to further the kingdom? Do you use it as a method to encourage others to want more and to do better? So what you do with that tool actually says much more about you than anything else, because I just think that God gives us this as an act of showing that we can be disciplined, showing that we can actually manage and we can lead. Because, you know, like you said, with a tool, you can either go to the left and do great things with it, or you can go to the right and just totally use it to destroy yourself and destroy others as well.
Right. You know, I'm glad you pulled that point out, because I would call it, from a biblical perspective, what you're talking about is stewardship, and a steward is a manager of someone else's goods or possessions. And so we are called to be good stewards. And we see that same thing that you're talking about, how we use the tool. We see that principle relayed by Jesus in Matthew 25, in particular verses 14 through 30. And we're all familiar with it, or we've heard about it, the parable of the talents, where Jesus is having this teachable moment. And he talks about a master getting ready to go away on a long journey. And as he goes, he calls in his three servants. One, he gives 5 talents. The other, he gives 2. And the last one, he gives 1. And as that story goes on, he's expecting a return on his investment. You know, he's looking at how they're going to use that tool to benefit him in one way or the other. And so the one with the 5, he makes a good investment on his. The one with the 2 makes a good investment with his. And the one with the 1 talent looked at the others with the 2 and the 5 talents and says, well, look, I'm not going to do what you all have done. The master, he's shrewd. He's going to want a return. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to bury what he gave me. In other words, I'm going to hold on to it. And when he comes back, I'll just give him that. So when he makes it back, he calls them, and they have to give an account of their stewardship to tell what they actually did with the money that he had given them. And so the one with the 5, he doubled his. He got 5 more. The one with the 2 got 4. We all know the story. The one with the 1, he kind of banished him, put him out, and said, matter of fact, give me the one you had, and I'm going to give it to the one that had 5. So now he had 11. You know, so not only, you know, he doubled his a little over, because he did what he was supposed to do. And there's something there I think we need to pull out, because if God has blessed us with something, who are we to say what we can and cannot do with what he's blessed us with? Use the tool for the greater good. You know, so we don't know. Scripture doesn't say, you know, what happened with those 3 men. We don't know, but I'm sure that set them up so they could have something that they could reciprocate from generation to generation, because they did what they were supposed to do with the tool that they had.
Right. And that's solid, man, because it's so many things you can pull out of what you just said. So you talked about generational wealth, you talked about compounding and assets, and all of these are principles that we talk about in financial literacy every single day. So the man, it's such a revolutionary piece of literature, man, because you find some people who say that the Bible is outdated. It's everything but outdated, because if you read it, man, a lot of things
it's not outdated. It's not outdated.
It's things that we see right now. It's things that we can actually relate to every single day of our life if we choose to.
Right.
So in my research, like I said,
and we see that with that text.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So in my research, I find out including mentions of gold, silver, riches, inheritance, debt, poverty, and other verbiage about finance, money is mentioned over 800 times in the Bible. There are actually over 2,000 verses that actually speak about money or wealth or finance or inheritance and stuff like that. So I just think it's eye-opening that God thought so much about it and put such an importance on it that he mentioned it basically 1 out of 10 times in every verse of the Bible.
Right.
I look at this, that Matthew 6:24 says that you can't serve both God and money. And I think this is one that a lot of people will throw at you, because they look at the acquisition of money or the having of money as serving it. But when you use it for its proper contents, you're not serving the money, you're actually using the tool to become an asset to something better. I always compare it to cotton. I think we had a conversation the other day. If you have cotton can either be used to make a shirt to clothe you, or you can use it as a cloth to kill somebody. It's all about what you do with the tool and how you manipulate it. But I don't think a lot of people.
You're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Yeah. So
it because it is a tool. It is a tool.
So what do you think? What do you think is the root of why so many people are hesitant to say that they actually want to be wealthy? You'll find a lot of people that say, I want just enough. I want enough to get by, give me my fair share, and I'm good. And once you let them know their wealth and abundance is available, a lot of people will either shy away from it or would just vehemently say that they don't want to be wealthy. Why do you think that is?
I think there are a number of things at play when people talk about not being wealthy. And one of the main things is having a good understanding of what wealth is. The scripture says that our people perish for the lack of knowledge. So a lot of people don't know what it is. They lack that knowledge, and they don't seek truth for themselves. They just take someone's word for it and say, nah, I don't need to have that. I just want to live comfortable. And so I'm fine there. And they get complacent there, again, because they have a distorted view and they don't view wealth as a tool. Most people look at it as an accumulation of things, and society has not helped that to say the more things you have, then the more important or the more successful you are. But you don't do anything with those things. You just accumulate and say, see what I have, as opposed to see what I've done or a legacy that I'm trying to leave behind, so that when the next generation comes, they can do the same thing that I've done or even better.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you use that word legacy, because I always look at legacy and generational wealth kind of as being mirrors of one another. And there goes right into my second go-to verse. My second go-to verse is Proverbs 13:22. And we talk about we talk how do I word this generally? There's such a negative stigma when it comes to what man's role in this society is, what our purpose in this society is. And I think Proverbs 13:22 basically gives us a blueprint of what man's primary responsibility is. We know that man is supposed to be a provider, but that the Proverbs 13:22 lets us know that a man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. Now, the first time I heard that, I heard it, but I really didn't get it. So me being the English major that I am, got that thing and I really broke it down. That's generational wealth at its core right there. It tells you a couple things. Number one, in order to give anything, you must first acquire it. So you must become wealthy. Number two, you are charged with making sure that your kid has the physical inheritance as well as the mental know-it-all to be able to duplicate that. Now, you also have to be good enough so that you and your child can relay that information down to another generation. So that one passage speaks of 3 generations where the father has to acquire it. He has to be able to retain it to the point to where he can leave it for his child. And then the child has to have the knowledge and the discipline to be a steward to be able to relay it down to a third generation. So that's deep. And once I really understood that, it really excited me about what my role was in this thing, because I know now that as we talk and as we teach about finances, we are doing God's work too, because now God has directly given us a task when it comes to what we should do as men when it comes to our family and our offspring. What do you think, Henry? I know those two are near and dear to you, man. Those are two that we kind of came up off of in the financial world.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just to kind of echo what you said, like I think it's important that we understand that what we're doing now, anything that we do, whether it be in our circle or anybody else's circle, what we're doing now is not for us. It's for the people behind us and the people that's to come. So we have to know and understand that we have to build something and leave something for them. Because a lot of time I think that's what's been missed. Kind of historically, it started that way. Going back to a few generations before, but somewhere that something happened. So and I think, and for me, I think people have a distorted view, kind of what you guys were saying of what wealth is. They confuse wealth with being rich. And we have to understand that those, in my opinion, those two things are different. I always say that Mike Tyson was rich, but he lost it all. MC Hammer was rich, but he lost it all. Now, they lost it all trying to be givers, but they didn't understand the concept of wealth and they were doing something that's going to last. So I think that's what we have to focus on. And then whatever that we do, make sure you're building something and doing something that's going to last. Take you, for example, Pastor, like what you're doing now, you said that you took over your grandfather's church, and it was your great grandfather's before then. That is something that's going to last.
Yeah.
Because it's generational.
Yeah.
And it's just simple. Like, you can take anything. You could take money out of it and put anything of substance in there, and know and understand that what you're doing, it has to be built and it has to last for generations to come.
Yeah, I actually agree. That is generational wealth, man, because knowledge is wealth. Influence is wealth. The ability to have a positive impact on people's lives is wealth. So the fact that he followed in his grandparents and his grandfather's footsteps to be the head of a flock, man, that's absolutely wealth. That's a perfect example, man. Great, good stuff.
I think, brothers, that most of us, and I'm glad you said that because I wanted to go there, that we confuse wealth with just being financial. But you can have all the financial wherewithal and all of these material possessions, but you can have poor health no wealth in what, having a good mental state or any of those other things, and you become poor in those areas, spiritually poor. So it's like, well, wait a minute, I have, as the elders would say, I have 6 in one hand and half dozen in the other, you know. Right. And it's like, okay, where do we go from here? It's all of those things that create wealth for us, because if you have the finances and you don't have the wherewithal to manage those finances well, you could blow it in one generation. And the next generation will have to start over all again, or they get caught up in this system or this cycle where they're just trying to get money. Where I see most of our young people, or most of those in my generation, are they try to get money and they have more of it, but it's never enough. It could never cover all of the things they need because they have a twisted view of it and think that it's just accumulation of things. And I'm poor in these other areas. You know, and so that does not help to create this wealth that we're talking about. Nonetheless, generational wealth. Yeah, that's one thing my grandparents, my grandparents taught me. Both my granddad and my great grandfather taught me, because my great granddad raised me, and I was talking with my aunt just a few minutes ago from Chicago, and we were talking about my great granddad was 92 when he passed. And Daddy didn't have a lot of money, but Daddy made sure that he provided for all 13 of his children. And I can't remember how many grandchildren, how many great-grandchildren he had. But if anybody needed something, we called my great-grandfather Dad. We went to Dad. And so he had it. You know, if anybody was hungry, we went to Dad. We walked right behind the house because he could plant a garden and outgrow anybody's garden that I've ever seen in our area. You know, so it was an abundance of things. And then he shared those things. He just didn't keep it. He shared it and showed us, this is what you need to do. Now, some of my family didn't get it because they didn't listen. They didn't put it into practice, but he shared it. And my grandfather did the same thing. And he believed that wealth was something to be accumulated. And after you accumulate it, you pass it down. And then the next generation has it, and then they pass it down.
It's amazing that, those people in that generation, man, from a resource perspective, they actually had less than we do. But it always seemed like they always had enough, only to make their ends meet, but to always be fruitful and to help out their neighbor and help out their family, man. So, it just goes to show that as time has passed and as generations have gone by, we can't look back and say that a lot of the things that we need to do when it comes to finances and when it comes to money and when it comes to being prosperous and being generous, that we didn't get it. It was there. It was a personal choice that we've made going forward, that we want to covet those material things and covet that power and that authority over our own finances more than helping our fellow man. So that you're right. I remember, they always make that joke about how grandma would always slide you that money. She put that money in that thumb and slide it to you. And people they always had money, man. And like I say, it wasn't because they had more resources. It was because they were much better. The same term you use, they were much better stewards.
Stewards, exactly.
And a lot of times it wasn't because, it wasn't because the education was there. I think right now we're probably one of the more educated societies in the history of the world. It's just that they were built. They had certain things that were instilled in them to where they, like you say, they got the money, they kept it. They didn't hoard it, but it wasn't wasteful with it either. But they were much more freely when it came to of their people and making sure that the community or that everybody did well. And I think that's something that we can all learn from, that we can all go back to and just be better stewards of our finances, become more educated about our money, and do more to help out the community and help our fellow man.
Right. As the expression goes, and no pun intended, our elders were not concerned with keeping up with the Joneses. In today's time, we are so concerned about keeping up with the Joneses, and we lose the little dimes and nickels that we do have because we're trying to keep up and impress other people, and wealth is not about making an impression on other people, again, about what I have and what I've attained and what I've accumulated. Wealth is saying, hey, this is what I have. I'm going to do something good with it and then I'm going to leave something behind so that those who are coming behind me can do the same thing. It was the same concept that Paul had with Timothy, because Paul told Timothy, look, I'm getting ready to go off the scene, but the things that you've seen in me do, that you've heard me do, he says, teach these to others. So he didn't want what he had been teaching and what he had been doing going to waste. So he put that time, he invested in somebody else and encouraged that person that he was investing in to then in turn teach these things to others so that they in turn can teach it to others.
Right.
The world calls it the law of reciprocity.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So that it can keep going and going and going.
That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
So I think about this too, man. We often hear people say that, you know, that the love of money is the root of all evil, and you know, to some, you know, I actually agree with that. But ironically, when you think about it, money alone can't do good deeds. Money can't do evil.
No.
Money alone has no authority or no traction in this world, man. It's all about the desires of our heart. So, you know, if you put a tool in the hands of an evil doer, then nothing but evil can come from it. Yet if you put a tool in the hand of a humanitarian or a good doer, only good's going to come from that. So like you say, like we talked about with our grandparents, they didn't have much, but they found a way to take the little bit that they had, and it always seemed to multiply. That goes back to what you're saying about the law of reciprocity too. Right. If you give with a good spirit, God would always find a way to make that thing multiply and compound so that you will always be a source for people who need you.
Certainly. As scripture says, bread that is cast on waters will return in many days. So whatever you sow, you're going to reap.
See, Henry, he said the same thing I said, man, but he said it much more eloquently. That's it. That's what you got to have around you. Sometimes you got to have some folk around you, man, that can say things that you want to say. They just can't say it the way you want to say it. So see, I don't claim to be the smartest guy in the world. But the one gift that I have is I know what I don't know. And I make sure that I keep people around me and all that are proficient in this area. So when it comes to that spiritual walk, and when it comes to, you know, that divine guidance, man, I'm glad to have Reb in my corner, man, because, you know, we need that, man. You need that balance, man. You need that balance of somebody that's gonna give it to you the way it needs to be given, but also can word it in a manner to where is palatable, because it's a lot of things that I say, just being honest about it, it's a lot of things that I say that my audience may not accept. But then I got Reb that can give it to them in a way to where it's a teachable moment and it's coming from that book. When it comes from that book, you can't argue with it. So it's good to have people like that that can give you that word from a different perspective.
Yeah. Well, that's why I said I had to be mindful of who I'm talking to tonight, because you know me.
Well, the one thing I like about Pastor Jones, man, is, you know, he's the same way all the time. He's the same way, you know, whether he's, you know, in a room full of dignitaries, or if he's speaking to people, you know, that we know really need his help, you know. So, you know, I've learned that I can come to him the way that I am with my imperfections, and, you know, I always leave with a good word and a good feeling. So, you know, we talk about wealth and influence, you know, the simple fact that he has an impact on your spirit. And a lot of times it's not from the verbal, you know, he has presence. So a lot of people can just be in his presence and just leave with the good spirit. So I think that within itself is a blessing, and it's a form of wealth within itself also. The way you make a person feel, the way you make a person feel, you know, what when a person sees you, or when they hear your name, or when somebody mentions you, what do you feel when that person speaks of you? To me, that's a form of wealth also, because it comes in the essence of influence.
Yeah.
Certainly. So, and I've learned, you know, while on this journey, it's not so much of me knowing a whole lot of people. It was just, as you said, that presence, that favor that opens up all of these other doors that I had no idea, you know, that were even there. And hey, you walk into different situations and people and have these encounters, and hey, just like we're having on tonight.
Yeah. And man, I'm definitely not going to hold you very long. You know, I know your time is precious, and it's a late Tuesday evening, but I definitely want to thank you for coming on. It's a conversation that I would love to have again at a further time, so that we can dive even further into it. Because I really think that once people, man, I just wish people would get this thing. If people really understood what the tool is there for, and they understand where the tool comes from. Like I say, money does not belong to man. It just doesn't. God owns everything on earth, and then have money as a part of the earth, and we understand that it does not belong to him. It's just merely a tool that we have to help elevate the kingdom. Now, I will ask you this, and this is a question that somebody just sent me on the system. For a believer, or a borderline believer, or somebody who's even challenged in their faith, since we're talking about money and finance, how do you define tithing?
I define tithe means a tenth. So it is a tenth of whatever your income is. You know that's up to your judgment, and we give a tenth of our earnings, you know, to whatever local body or organization or whatever we do, whoever we want to give that to for kingdom building. It is simply a tenth. That's all it means, a tenth of whatever our income is. And so the tithe is the principle behind that is, as it says in Malachi, bring all of the tithes and offering into my house, so there may be meat in the storehouse. And all that means is, because, and with that scripture, you have to understand it, because we always use it totally out of its context. But the background of that was, in Old Testament, everything was brought to the temple. It was known as the offering of first fruits, whatever was planted or whatever crop you harvested, then it grew first, that would be brought to the temple. And so anyone who was in need would come to the temple, and the temple would address the issue. Not all of these other organizations like we have today. And I think over time that has been misconstrued and all of that, and people quote that scripture and take it out of context. And so that's what God was telling them to do. Bring that in. If everybody brings a little, then we could turn that little into a lot and help everybody, and not just a selected few.
Right. Yeah. And it took me a while to get that one. It did, you know, just being transparent about it. I struggled with that one for years, man. I struggled with for years about, you know, why do I have to bring my money to this physical location when God would never touch it? And you know, it took a pastor to really break it down to me, you know, and I asked God to give me clarity on that. And I don't even think the pastor was going to preach about that day, but what he mentioned, or what he talked about, it cleared everything up for me. And here's the cusp of what he said. Everything belongs to God anyway, right or right?
Right.
So if God had an orchard, let's just say God had an orchard, and on that orchard there were thousands of apple trees. He gave one apple tree to each family. So you could go to this apple tree and you could pull 10 apples off this tree whenever you chose to do so. The apple tree belonged to God, the land belonged to God, the fruit belonged to God. God planted the seeds. So basically, you're getting a return on investment when you didn't put anything into it. All he asked for, as offering is 1 apple from every 10 that you pick. Now you didn't you didn't have the seeds to start off with. You didn't plant the seeds. You didn't tend to the land. All you do is come, take up the harvest, and all he asked for is 1 out of every 10. Now, if you're not willing to do that
sounds like a mighty good deal to me.
Hey man, if you're not willing to do that, I got to question your sanity, and you definitely not nobody I want to invest with. If you put nothing up front, you put absolutely nothing up front, and you get 90% of the return on that, you'd be crazy not to take that.
Right. You said something important, because I had mentioned stewardship earlier, and that's where I kind of wanted to come from this, come from that perspective of stewardship. And there are 4 principles of stewardship, and the very first one that we must understand is the principle of ownership, and that is that God is the sole owner of everything. Scripture tells us the earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell in it. Even we are his. Everything. He owns everything, and he's so good that let's just say he gives us that and says, okay, in return, I just want 10. I'm gonna let you keep the 90. You do whatever you want to do with the 90. Just give me the 10. There's the other principle of that, and that's the principle of responsibility, that as stewards, God expects us to use his goods and ability in a way that he would approve. That tithe allows us to do that in one way or another, whatever the vision or mission of that church is. Then there's the principle of accountability, because we're going to have to stand before and give an account. Going back to the parable of the talents, each one of those stewards had to come back and give an account of what they did with what wasn't even theirs to begin with. It was something that they gave, and they had to give an account. And then after that, here it is, just what you said, a return on the investment. There's the principle of reward. How we manage and use the things God places in our hands today determines what he'll give us tomorrow. So if we don't use well the things that we have in our hand today, when the next generation comes, there's nothing for us that we're going to be able to give them on tomorrow. And the same way with what God gives us. If we don't use it well today, how's he going to give it to us on tomorrow?
Now, see, Henry, what Rev said, see how he said it? I'm gonna tell you how we've said it. He ain't gonna give you a whole lot. You can't do a lot with a little bit.
That's true.
That's it.
But, man,
do something with what you have.
Yeah, it's amazing how all these conversations come full circle, because it actually tells you a lot about the church too. Because in our neighborhoods, I'm going a little bit off subject here, but in a lot of neighborhoods, people expect the church to be everything. They expect the church to be able to perform crazy miracles, and in most situations, the church does. But think about it: you're asking the church to do something with 10% that society fails to do with 90%. You're expecting the church to do exactly with 10%, when if you look at your check stub with your Medicaid and your Social Security and your FICA, you expect the church to do a lot with 10% when the government gets you for about 30%, and we don't hold them accountable to do much.
Ooh-wee.
So I don't, that's the part right there that kind of
preach, Lord.
Because I believe in holding everybody accountable. I believe that if you're a true leader, if your intentions are well, then you can be held accountable. But how can we expect the church to do so much with so little when and you think about this too? When it comes to the church, a lot of people give begrudgingly. When it comes to the government, you give it and don't think about it. And not only that, when we teach you,
don't think twice.
When we teach you how not to give it, the first thing you say is, "Man, I don't want to get in trouble with the IRS." You cool with having the IRS to question your intention. But when God has a 10%, you ain't really worried about the consequences of that.
Henry, see how we fight with everything in us not to give it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what we fail to realize is that if we bring those few resources into that local body, if we give the resources to that local body, wherever that church is, say we have one community that has one church in it. If those members were in that church and they would just bring the 10, that church could address whatever issues are that are within that community.
Yeah.
But we don't see it that way. We think that, hey, I'm giving it to you, then you got to tell me what you're gonna do with it, where it's going, how you gonna use it, who did you give it to, why did you give it to them, how much of it did you give it to them. The thing is to helping somebody else, so in turn that when they come along, that they will bring that back in, and then we could go ahead and we could reciprocate what we've been doing over and over and over again. Because
Right.
that's the law. The world calls it the law of reciprocity. In the church, we call it reaping and sowing. So if you don't sow anything, you can't reap anything. And a lot of people want to reap in areas that they have not sown, have no intention of sowing.
Mm-hmm.
So you cannot reap where you haven't sown. If you sow, then you are also going to reap. That's if you sow nothing, guess what? You're gonna reap nothing.
I got him started here.
Y'all don't make me preach on
Hey,
here.
I'm about to
I
get
just
this
feel
collection
something.
plate. I'll get this collection plate.
Yeah, I think. Look. You can put Reb Cash out on the screen right now. That's collection right there. But you know,
$sign Reg Jones 06. If this has been a blessing to your life.
He brings about a great topic though, and you know he's right. When it comes to financing, when it comes to the church, people definitely want to see where that money goes. They want to know what you've done with that money. They want to know where every single dime has went. And I still take it back. I still take it back to the federal government. I take it back to the federal government. I know we shouldn't talk about church and state, but I take it back to the federal government. Our country, a country that bases so many things off of credit score, off of your history of paying bills. Our country right now, they haven't calculated since these last two stimulus. But even before this stimulus, our country was over $2 trillion in debt. Now, a country that says that it bases everything in its doctrine off of biblical studies, yet we're $2 trillion in debt. We gave away $1 trillion in the first stimulus. We gave away another $1 trillion in the second stimulus. Nobody really knows where any of that money went.
Oh, I know where some of it went.
Oh, I know where quite a few of it.
They going to research some amberjack fish.
Yet there's no outcry from the general person as for accountability. I think that goes twofold because number one, like I say, we freely give to man and expect man to have good intentions, yet we give money to the church and we want to question not only the man of God, but the man of God's intentions. So once again, expected to expand that through nations, yet we freely give to the government, no questions asked, and we don't hold them account for anything. I'm not good with that, and that's why I teach people about money so that I'm not trying to tell people don't pay taxes or anything like that. I just believe that if given a choice between keeping my money and being a good steward of it and putting it in capable hands to be able to be a blessing to the masses and giving it to a government that hasn't proven to me yet the proficiency to make the good decisions about it, I'm willing to keep it in my own hands a little bit longer. So I'm gonna go ahead and end the call on that.
Absolutely right.
Because Reb had me getting happy there for a second. And go ahead. What I'm not gonna do is fall out this chair and get happy because, like I said, Reb was getting warmed up, and this is a subject, man, that is near and dear to my heart. So, Reverend Jones, man, I really appreciate you jumping on the call tonight, man. I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate.
I thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, I appreciate you being the man that you are, man. I appreciate everything that you do for my community, man, for our community. And if there's anything that I can ever do to be of assistance to you in any way, shape, form, or fashion, man, may it be business, may it be the ministry, or may it be personal, I'm just a phone call away.
I appreciate it, brother. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I hope I said something that helped somebody, to better understand this topic. Can't get my words out. This topic of what we're talking about.
Man, you helped me.
Oh yeah. It was definitely beneficial, needed. So I appreciate Ken allowing me to be a fly on the wall. Yeah, it was some good stuff, man. good talk, man. It was really good,
Bro. Told you, man. Told you, bro. He a powerhouse, man. He's a man of few words. When he talks, man, the earth starts to move.
Say that again.
So do you have any words you want to give us in closing tonight?
I think about my granddad when we talk about this topic, because my grandfather was a giver, and every year, few times a year, my granddad would be Santa at Christmas. I know when I was younger, my grandfather pastored 3 churches, and when we were younger, he would buy toys for all of us, all the kids at the church, and then he would buy fruit. He would have a 40-foot trailer and just load it down with fruit in these huge fruit baskets and give to all of the elders at the church, and then everybody there was able to have fruit. Every Easter, he played Easter Bunny and brought all of this candy, all of these chocolates and all of this. And then every year around graduation, my grandfather was a personal scholarship fund for all of the graduates that attended the churches that he pastored. My grandfather did not go to the church for any of that. He went in his own pocket, and we often wondered how in the world could he be able to give all of this like he did for 30 plus years. And I asked him about it, and we would get mad sometimes. And I said, look, you're always giving everybody else something, and just giving. And most people don't appreciate it. But my grandfather shared a profound truth, because he understood that if he was going to reach people, that he also had to meet them where they are. And it was just a small token of his appreciation to be able to give, because God had given so much to him. Although it wasn't a lot of money, but God had blessed him in ways that most men are really poor at. And he took that little bit and was able to do a whole lot and bless a whole lot of people. And people are still talking about him today. He's been dead almost 2 years now. And people still remember that. And I just remember that about, my grandfather and my great-grandfather doing that as well. And I learned something from those men, that God blesses you to be a blessing to somebody else. Don't hold on to it. Don't be tight-fisted with it. But if the Lord has blessed you with it, then you be a blessing, because as I said earlier, bread cast on waters will return to you in many days. And can I tell you, even the blessings and the seeds that he sown, I'm reaping in areas that I have not sown, because of what my forefathers have done before me. And so when that time comes for me to do the same thing, I'll be able to do that, and to be able to do it with joy, and to be a blessing to somebody else. And that's all I want to encourage you to do. Just take what you have and be a blessing with it, and trust God with a little bit, and he can turn a little bit into a whole lot. Just be a good steward of it.
Mm-hmm. That's it. That's it. Yeah.
So guys, I appreciate you all for jumping on with us tonight, man. Once again, special congratulations to our guest, man. Man, love you, bro. That was good stuff, man.
Yes, brother. Love you too. Love both of y'all brothers, man. It's been fun. It's been good. Hopefully we can do this again.
Oh, absolutely.
Definitely.
So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for jumping on. The same thing with a group panel conversation on next Tuesday. But I'll probably be back on this same channel on Thursday night doing what I call a wealth worksheet, showing you guys how you can make small changes in your finances and have that thing grow to the point where you can have things that you never thought would be possible for you to have. Just a little bit of discipline and a little bit of faith, guys, can grow your income to places that you never would have thought. The guy that you're looking at right now, proof of it. If you only knew the journey, if you knew what things looked like less than, man, if you knew what it looked like 10 years ago, you probably would run from it. If you knew what it looked like less than 5 years ago, you would question the journey. So when I tell you that big things can happen in small periods of time, guys, the guy that you're talking to right now is proof of that. And with that being said, I wish all of you a good night. Once again, thank you all for joining us. I enjoyed this conversation more than you guys would ever know. And please understand, we will have this conversation again soon.
Yeah.
So good night, everybody. Appreciate you guys.
Good night.
All
Good
right.
night. God bless.